Good evening, everyone. My name is Shadab Tayabi. I am the president of the Singapore FinTech Association. And I'll introduce myself a bit later, but let me just get my panelists up on stage first. Jeff from Trade Together. Guillaume from Accenture. Sabrina from HBAR Foundation. And Elise from PALO IT. So can we go back to the previous slide?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if you can go back to the previous slide. You can see that there is a Slido link and the QR code there. And we're going to talk about our cryptocurrencies, the future of money. And there are quite a few interesting questions that have already come in from the audience, because some of you were very good to pick up the QR code and start putting in the questions. And we'll have a very engaging session. But before I do that, I have to justify why I'm here as well. So just to give you a bit of a context, I am the elected president of the Singapore FinTech Association. We are the national industry association representing the whole FinTech ecosystem in Singapore. We work very closely with multiple stakeholders, including of course, the founder community, the industry, the government organizations, policymakers, regulators, very closely as well. And our current membership base is about 800 companies that are members, representing about 500, 600 of the fintech companies across multiple segments. We have our own 10 different subcommittees as well. And we have very recently launched our Web 3.0 subcommittee, which is, of course, in sync with Singapore's, I would say, very clear mandate to become the blockchain crypto hub globally as well. So with that, I would like to welcome the panelists onto stage. And we've all gone through some of the presentations, except for Guillaume, because I think you took the difficult option of not being...
Because I have nothing to sell.
So to that, I'll say, Guillaume, we are all selling all the time. If anybody says that somebody was selling, I would say you're trying to sell that idea back to us. Everybody's selling all the time. Anyway, so I think it's going to be a very good conversation, I hope. So Jeff, maybe I'll start with you. I think the first question that has come in from the audience is pretty much on what would be the main triggering factor to democratize crypto adoption as a form of payment?
Okay, so that's a tough one. So I guess just a few hours ago, I discussed that with one of our intern superstar, Weijie. I think he's around. He's 25 years old, I'm 41. And I told him, I think we were having a lunch, I told him, do you buy some stuff in cryptocurrency sometime? Or when was the last time you did that? And I think Weijie, correct me if I'm wrong, he told me, no, I've not done it. And in fact, even me personally, last time I did it, it was more to pay some contractor in Middle East or in Indonesia in USDC or USDT, but I don't pay or purchase any goods in cryptocurrency today, despite I'm working in Web3. So I guess the triggering factor to democratize cryptocurrency payment, I guess, is for any crypto player involved in this to crack the simplicity like we are using Visa or MasterCard payment today. So if I take my Visa card, I'm pretty happy with one Visa card, credit card, who's allowing me to get some miles. And I managed to get one way back to Europe for free after purchasing all my goods, So I guess the day I will transition to payment in cryptocurrency is the day where I will have the same simplicity of paying in XAGD or USDC or whatever, giving me this sort of possibility to get some miles or rewarding. That's really what I have in mind. Okay,
thanks for that, Jeff. I think I would probably just switch gears a bit and go to Sabrina, actually. We talked about what's going to trigger, but what do you think are the current barriers to adoption of crypto for payments?
Yeah, so well, to maybe to piggyback on what Jeff said, it's getting there, right? We're seeing some integration into those fiat rails, like you mentioned, USDC. Like they're already being they're working with like Visa and MasterCard, they could settle USDC into USD, right? So I think that's a step in the right direction. We're going to see more and more stablecoins having these kind of integrations, right? Right now, people think they probably think cryptocurrency. They think like Bitcoin, Ethereum. Those are not really good means of cryptos for to use as means of payment because they fluctuate. And as we know, very recently they fluctuate a lot. But then that's why I actually talked about stablecoins quite a bit and CBDCs quite a bit in my presentation, because I think those are going to be the gateway to being able to pay with crypto. There is still, I would say, some regulatory hurdles there. I mean, there's not a lot of clarity. There are some jurisdictions that are friendlier than others. I think Singapore is quite advanced in that way. But for example, like we work with Korea also, right? And there, like banks that are thinking about looking into stable coins and stuff, they find uncertainty quite difficult. Like it's difficult to actually go and commercialize in other jurisdictions. Yeah, definitely the regulatory aspect, and then the actual integration into the traditional finance rails, because we're not going to go from fiat to crypto. It's going to be a transition, and we need to build those pipes, that integration. And once that happens, then things will flow.
Thanks, Sabrina. I think that brings me to a question for Guillaume. Given what Sabrina mentioned, that it has to go into mainstream, but do you think that should financial institutions embrace cryptocurrencies? It's a very loaded question. So
yes. So the answer is yes, because I believe that the mass adoption will come via financial institutions. Today, if you want to buy crypto, it's too complex. You can go through a centralized exchange, but if you really want to be into crypto, you go into DeFi, and it's too complex. You have so many protocols, so many wallets. You spend a lot of time on it. So, and the banks, they realize that. They realize that they need to offer Web3 wallet, the custody solution, settlement, but they're not risk taker. So they have too much to lose at the moment, so they're going very slowly, and clearly they're entering the space because they started a few years ago with permission blockchain, mainly in trade finance, because this is an ecosystem where people don't trust each other, so the blockchain is a good solution. And then they're moving slowly into digital assets. So they're looking at crypto because there is yield and there is a push from some customers, specifically in high net worth. But also they're looking at asset tokenization, and it's growing as well. So because you can fractionalize any kind of assets, tangible or intangible, and it's getting very popular.
Thanks, Guillaume. I think that brings me to a question for Sabrina only for now. With the advent of different types of blockchains, how should businesses go about deciding which ones to build their applications on, and are there any and probably the implications that you see for each of those options?
So I think some of the key considerations are, of course, there's the performance. Obviously, that's so you look at things like the TPS, like are the transactions final? You look at security, of course. There's also debate whether private versus public. And I think, as Guillaume mentioned, a lot of the early experiment was mostly on private blockchains. They do have some limitations in terms of visibility of what's happening on the network. So, if you want to, audit or, that has some limitations. So I think we're seeing a bit of more of a migration or being more open-minded now towards public blockchains. And I think there's still some blockers in terms of a lot of blockchains actually you're not able to reverse transactions. So this is one area that we're addressing. Limited KYC, AML tools. Now that's changing actually. All that infrastructure is coming into place. I think there's a misconception that blockchain is actually crypto is facilitating a lot of illegal or shady dealings. But actually, if you look at public blockchains, everything is available for everyone to see. So it's actually highly traceable. I think there is a lot more money laundering happening with fiat than with crypto. Crypto is actually not as sketchy as people think it is, right?
I mean, my simple, explanation of that is news is only attractive if it's negative news. So, people try to put that into perspective all the time. But I think I would definitely want Alice to throw some light on that same question about, which are the blockchains which are the considerations for someone to look at the different blockchains that they are considering. I mean, given you come in from a very completely different perspective as well, depending on the type of players that you work with, which are quite varied in their application use cases as well.
I would add on to what Sabrina was saying. In addition to that, climate impact is also a massive factor. So a lot of these institutionals are becoming more and more aware of their carbon footprint. So some of the L1s, like Ethereum, do have a high carbon footprint. It's very popular. There's a massive ecosystem with ecosystem effects. So it's hard to discount that. But then we do have some of the newer up-and-coming players like Hedera, you've got Chia, then you've also got some of the layer 2s as well. So thinking about that, but most importantly, a lot of the clients that we work with, they care about the security, stability, cost, and the speed, and also support for building on their network. So a lot of these networks have these foundations, and they have two mandates, I suppose, or two main things that they look at, which is, are we going to offer grants to people, encourage people to build on our network? And two, they act as sort of the custodian of the network in some cases as well. This is very important, knowing that there is some party, whether it's centralized or decentralized, which is looking after the future of the network. If you're going to spend a lot of capital building on a network, you need to think about these things. So it's the longevity of a network. And another one is interoperability as well. So you've got these cross-chain networks, you've got Polkadot, Cosmos as examples, and then you're also looking at bridging. So if you have launched on Ethereum, you might want to go on Solana, and thinking about how you're going to bridge across to that. That is very important as well, because we're going to enter this world where we want to be able to interact with different tools and not have to worry about what is the underlying infrastructure that we've built on.
Thanks, Elise. I think you touched upon longevity as well, but just to switch gears a bit on that factor, given we have Jeff here, who's the first. You are the first crypto robo advisor in Singapore. Okay, and just to be very clear here, we have already thrown the disclaimer here. His solutions are only available to AIs, not to retail investors. What are so the question to you would be, where do you see the crypto market in the next 5 years from now?
Yeah, another tough question. Okay, so yeah, I said in the beginning of my presentation, Try Together, that we started the journey in December 2020. And if you look backward, January 2020, do you remember what was the price of Bitcoin at that time? Don't look at your mobile, just guess. 25K, January 2020, okay.
Hey Google, what was the price?
Below. 5K. Yeah, it was between 5 to 7K, okay. Of course, he went all the way up to 60, 62, 65, and now we are at 20, maybe it's 19, 20, right? So 21. So it is still plus 300%, right? So of course it can go down to 15, some people say 12. 12 will be even plus 30% if you compare with the S&P 500, and gold is still decent. So I'm just trying to say here that the fundamentals of Bitcoin are still around. The security of the protocol behind Bitcoin is still one of the strongest in the world. So I'm definitely bullish. So of course, I think within the next 5 years, for sure, we will reach the 65K. I think. Within the next 2 years, it's going to be difficult for everyone. But I like to compare Bitcoin to Singapore. It will be the first type of asset that will go up once maybe the Fed start to bring a little bit of relaxation, or if we start to get some recovery. And I think it will be much faster than the asset class such as the S&P 500. So this is, I hope I respond to your question.
Yes, you have answered it very
Fantastic.
well in the best way possible, which brings me to a bit of a balanced view from Guillaume as well, separately. Where do you think are the biggest risks in the crypto ecosystem?
The biggest?
Risks in the crypto ecosystem.
Oh, that's a good question. So I'm not going to talk about the financial market risk because it's the same in traditional markets. Maybe the way I can answer is there is something that is nagging me lately, because I spend a lot of time on DeFi. We have been talking about decentralization, we have been talking about DAO, but I'm very actually concerned about the fact that we're not really decentralized on many protocols. And the DAO, I thought it was great at first, but now I'm a bit scared. I give you an example that happened the last few days. You have the protocol Solend, which is the biggest lending and deposit protocol on Solana. You had a whale there that I think he borrowed like 100 million in Stablecoin, and as a collateral, he had 170 million of Sol, which is the token for Solana. But obviously, you saw the market crashed, and so there was there was a risk that if Sol reached 22, it got liquidated. But it's a whale, so if it happens, then it's going to crash. It's going to tank the token, and it could even crash the Solana network. And what happened is that basically the people running the Solana protocol, they decided to make a proposal to take the ownership of basically this position. So that's what happened. Why? Because they put it as a proposal, and 97% say yes. Obviously, they tried before that to reach the well, but they didn't. But you can assume that the guy who made the investment, he knows what's his liquidation price. So I'm very concerned about the fact that we get into that space. And also because the DAO, you can think it's one token, one vote. When you look at the people that actually vote, there is one wallet that accounted for 90% of the vote. So it's not decentralized. So we have to find a solution there. If we want to have mass adoption, we need to understand how we can actually bring full decentralization, and we need to find a solution on the governance. So for me, this is a massive risk. So I'm going obviously a bit into the heart of DeFi. There is all the risk that I see in Oracle risk, Oracle being the assets you bring off-chain to on-chain, the smart contract bugs that we see. But clearly that one, I think that's an interesting one If you have an idea, I'm really happy to discuss it afterwards.
Thanks, Guillaume, and thanks for highlighting those risks there as well. I think I want to come back to the topic also of cryptocurrencies, whether it's the future of money or not. So let me just throw a question at Sabrina, if you're okay to answer. What are the current barriers to adoption of crypto for payments? Going back to crypto as a form of payment.
Yeah, I think I kind of touched upon that a little bit earlier, where I think we'll need the transition. Of course, probably using stablecoin, CBDCs, but in terms of remaining barriers beyond that infrastructure, I think the user experience has to change. And I touched upon it also briefly in the presentation. The custody issue, of course, being able to custody your own crypto is, it's great. It's you really own your assets as opposed to the bank owning your assets, really. But it comes with a user experience headache. And I think that still hasn't quite been solved from a UX perspective. I think it's getting there. Like, I'm seeing some interesting projects, adding, things like biometric authentication to secure your private keys. Like, eventually, I want those private keys to be abstracted. I want those wallets, to be abstracted and to be able to just, swipe your card the same way you swipe your Visa or your MasterCard. And then we'll see some true adoption. But definitely, compared to when I entered that space, it's already it's grown by leaps and bounds, and the awareness of crypto has grown by leaps and bounds, and that's also thanks to big bucks spent by centralized exchanges and certain protocols that have done a lot of education. Well, we're getting there. It's not, of course, not happening as fast as I would like it, but in the grand scheme of things, just give it a few more years, and we'll have those user experience headaches, I think, figured out.
Thanks, Sabrina. I think you touched on that, but you talked about the CBDCs versus stable coins in your presentation also, and there was very clearly demarcated that it's going to be slow for CBDCs. Slower adoption comparatively at this stage. One of the questions that has come up is, if a government issues its own CBDC, why would it allow payment with other stable coins issued by private companies?
Yeah, that's a question. Will there be more than one? Can there be more than one? Well, anyway, I think we'll need to have some sort of interoperability, right? CBDC cannot exist by itself, right? There's also other countries, right? So there are CBDC projects trying to figure out how to talk to other countries' CBDC projects, So, I think you can be I don't know, the Fed, for example, can decide that all CBDCs are legit and that stable coins are not, and that regulators can make that call if they want. Some countries do not allow any form of tokenization. So I think it's really up to the regulators. It's not something that the industry will be able to. I mean, we may try to influence, but there's also the debate as to will successful commercial CBDCs, will they be adoptable as successful commercial stable coins may be adoptable as a CBDC. There's also that debate whether would USDC actually be a good fit for a CBDC. I think if a stable coin gains enough traction, enough adoption, and becomes too big to fail, then it could become a de facto CBDC. I think that scenario is possible as well.
True. You're absolutely right. I mean, if a stable coin really grows in terms of adoption, the central bank would have no choice but to make it the CBDC.
Yeah, or they could even just like white label the
White label it.
technology and just tweak it to have their control over it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just speculating, but this is how I'm guessing it could turn out.
Yeah, and I can tell you it's not easy to moderate such a diverse group of panelists. I think I'll probably go to Elise because I think you have been sitting quiet for a while. And you talked about some of the, the green aspects as well, right? The question is, how can crypto save the planet?
Oh, yeah. So there's a lot of FUD. I like this question. There's a lot of FUD around crypto and how it's destroying our planet and contributing to our carbon footprint. So there is a research paper released by Kathy Wood and Jack Dorsey and some other co-authors around how crypto is actually driving the adoption of clean energy. So I can give a real example. So I do Bitcoin mining. It's not very good for the planet, but I use solar for Bitcoin mining because without using solar, I don't have enough economic incentive to continue mining. So, and that actually incentivized me to install more solar panels. So whatever I don't consume normally for my energy needs, I can actually use it for Bitcoin mining. If I wasn't engaged in Bitcoin mining, I wouldn't actually go to clean energy and install these solar panels. So we have actually seen where solar farms are being built out because there is economic incentive to actually build out this infrastructure, supply a town with clean energy, and also use it for Bitcoin mining. And we've also seen how in states like Texas, they are using excess energy, which is not being underutilized energy, and they're using such as the flares off the gas, the fields, and they're using that for Bitcoin mining purposes. So there is a lot of research out there that's actually contributing to a greener, cleaner planet.
Thank you, Alice. That's quite enlightening for quite a lot of us, including myself. Would love to find out more on that paper as well after the session. I have this question, which I think I'll ask Guillaume. What is the advantage if cryptocurrency versus e-money that we can see in certain jurisdictions on mobile already? So, where do you see the advantage of cryptocurrency coming in versus the, e-money that's already there?
I think crypto as a libertarian feeling. I mean, it's coming from. It has the white paper from Satoshi Nakamoto. It's 2008. It's right after the fall of Lehman Brothers, and I think it came at that time because it was losing trust in the current system. So when you're using e-money, you're using the traditional infrastructure. The crypto and the whole DeFi world is building a parallel infrastructure. So where you're skipping basically all the current financial infrastructure. And we were talking about Web3 and this is it. This is, I own my own money because in the bank, that's not my money. The bank has it as a loan on you. That's very different. And we saw it, we have a few examples where the bank went bankrupt and the money is gone. So when you have it in your wallet, that's yours. That's the main difference.
Provided if you remember where to put the private keys.
Yes, yes, and that's why I think when you have a solution for dealing with private keys, and you heard Sabrina, she doesn't want to deal with private keys, but who does? It's I have as well. I mean, if my house is burning, I don't have it on paper. I have it on actually something that resists to fire, but we cannot do that for all the private keys. Yeah.
Thanks, Guillaume. With that, I'll ask another not so easy question. I mean, since we're here, we're talking about blockchain. We looked at your Luna wallet earlier. So that question has to come. Are stable coins doomed in the long run? That's a question for you.
For me?
Yes.
Sure.
And of course, we'll get Jeff to throw some light on it as well.
So
And sorry, I'm not the one who's
Yeah.
asking these controversial questions,
yeah,
okay?
no, that's a great question. Actually, are stablecoins doomed, right? So I think it depends on the type of stablecoin you're looking at, right? I think we've seen several generations of algorithmic stablecoins like not do so well, like they come and go, and they're usually not very good at keeping their peg. But those are the most interesting ones, right? And eventually, maybe we'll iterate until there's like a model that really works and is sturdy. I think in terms of crypto-backed stablecoins, the model that's worked the best is like the Maker DAO model that goes under a certain amount of collateral, you liquidate, and mechanically cannot really fail. So that's been very resilient. And then you have the most straightforward model, which is $1 versus put this in the bank, mint $1 of a stable coin, like fully fiat reserved. And granted that there's enough transparency on the state of the reserve, I believe that those are probably the sturdiest ones. So I do think that those are the ones that are going to see the most adoption, even though algo is also very interesting, and those can pick up very quickly through DeFi, through a lot of things, right? That I think in the long run, I'm seeing fully fiat-backed stablecoins being the biggest part of the market cap. But that's my forecast.
Jeff, do you have anything to add on that?
Just quickly, in fact, to go back on the inception of the stablecoin and why stablecoin came to the market. I guess we have to recall that back in 2014, when USDT was created, the purpose was also to help the ecosystem to move on with their treasury, to pay their employees, to finance some project, because there was no access to the traditional banking system. And in 2022, it's still the same. It is extremely difficult for a crypto player to have a bank account open. And we managed to have one open because two of the co-founders in Trade Together are coming from the banking industry. So we know the way it works, but you have certainly heard some story of Temasek-backed company who are still struggling to get a bank account open. So the reality is that stablecoins were not created like that by surprise. There was a reason for this. And so long as you have 25,000 banks out there who are not helping, that are not helping the ecosystem to move on, you will still have stablecoin. And I think if you take some projects such as True USD, we like this stablecoin at Trade Together because they are doing real live audit of their reserve. So if you look at USDC or USDT, it's a 1 month attestation. Every month you can look at the audit. True USD you can see in real time. So of course you can say, but even if it's real time, maybe it's fake. But at least they are moving on. So my take on this, especially concerning algorithmic stablecoin, is if you compare this with a car in autopilot, maybe you're going to have some accident with a Google car, right? But you won't dismiss all the algorithmic link to the drive, to the car, because there is one accident. Otherwise, you stop innovation. However, I think my other take on this is you need to protect retail investor. This is the most important. We need to protect people. You can't just issue your stablecoin and say, hey, just go consume, and one day, oh, sorry, we're going to do an airdrop to help you. Yeah, so yeah, that's my take on this.
No, that's a very good point. I mean, as a community, fintech community, and some of us being Singaporeans here, we all realize that not everything can be blamed on the government, right? And not every thing can be asked by the government. We do things and we take responsibility. And there are challenges that might come in. That doesn't mean that you start, it's not like you throw the baby out of the bathwater, as simple as that. Let me just turn the table to Elise now. And how much time do we have? This is the last question.
How long do you guys want to stay?
Let's be very clear. We don't have hotel accommodation provided, right?
You do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the budget for that for sure. Let's just keep it as the last question, unless there is you guys want me to look at more. The question was, yes, how would government regulations impact the crypto culture and communities? Do you think that decentralization still matters?
I think this is a question for someone who is a little bit more familiar with the regulation around here.
Okay, so Guillaume, you.
Can you repeat the question?
How would government regulations impact the crypto culture and communities?
It does, because it started at completely unregulated. And now what you see is that for ramp on and ramp off, you need to provide much more information, like your ID, and even central exchange are asking to whitelist the addresses where you can send and receive, so they're under some rules like travel rules, the FATF. All this is going really fast, but I think we have to do that for mass adoption. There's no way. So yes, it's changing the culture, but it was mentioned at the very beginning. Blockchain is here to stay, and for the best.
I think I agree with you. I think we all have to realize that for anything to be having a much broader adoption, there will definitely be some elements and rules. It's all about creating that level playing field for everyone, and then everybody comes in with their own ways of managing it. But unless you have that level playing field and somebody sort of managing it, we may end up in a more difficult situation than where we start with.
Yeah, so, but I just want to add, it's interesting question, because you have some protocols, you know it, where, for instance, you have protocols that do synthetic securities, and they're completely decentralized, so you have no owner behind it. It's open source. So, and those securities mimic basically what you have in the S&P, and the SEC, the SEC, they feel at loss. Basically, they don't know who to chase. They cannot shut it down, and it means that anyone without any financial education can go into there and play around. So they are part of DeFi that I think it would be very difficult to basically impose regulation.
I do have something to add to that. So there are consumers who are actually asking for more regulation because they want to feel safer, protected before they want to use this. So it's very important for mainstream adoption. For crypto natives, like some of you in this room, you probably don't want regulation, don't really care about it. But for about, I would say, 70% of the population, they care. A lot of the protocols, well, some of the protocols are also asking for more clarity on regulation, knowing that it's coming down the pipeline. They want to plan for it. You've got these crypto exchanges like Independent Reserve. They were originally from Australia. They're now in Singapore. They're asking for clarity on regulation. They want to be regulated.
Yes, Jeff.
On the synthetic asset, one big producer of synthetic asset was part of the Terra ecosystem. Some of you guys know maybe, and they were using Terra UST to do all their type of protocol and so on and so forth. And in fact, something interesting is that on our side, we're extremely excited about this synthetic asset because these synthetic assets are considered, at least in Singapore, if we talk with some lawyer, as a non-capital market product. So basically, it's like you are using a synthetic asset of Apple. You are using an Amazon stock, but it's not a stock. It's basically a token, right? And you can do lots of trading strategies, and it was, and you can, and there was lots of ways to make money with that. Okay. So we did some study and research from a legal perspective to know whether or not we were eligible to use that in Singapore. And the legal response was, since these synthetic assets don't give you dividend, and the protocol of it is like another token, then you can use it. But guess what? When we have this Terra collapse, the USC, I mean the SEC has started to launch a legal action against the founder of the station, and Terra, Do Kwon was also part of it, because it was in breach with the Securities Act of the US. So which means that if you are doing synthetic asset, at least that's my interpretation, and it mimics a stock related to the US, at some point, if it reaches a certain stage, someone will call you. You can do this in an anonymous manner. There are lots of people doing this in an anonymous manner. But at some point, it's blockchain, so people will find you. I'm not defending the US or whatever. This is just our experience here. Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff, for sharing. Gim, you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree.
Okay, agree. I would say, you guys have been extremely cooperative. I can see that, there's a lot more to share, but given, we are already running like 8:41, and some of us do have to go back. I'd like to wrap up the session here, but there are quite a few good learnings for us. I think I'll just start with what Elise said, and I'd rather, bring that out again. For all of us who are crypto natives here, it's always, looking at not completely decentralizing it, but for mass adoption to happen, for any regulatory jurisdiction to allow things to happen in a different way, you will always have to have some level of regulation coming in, because it just gives consumers more confidence, and the moms and pops and the retail investors more so-called confidence in the overall system. So I think to a certain extent, we all agree that cryptocurrency will become a form of money or payment system, and the adoption will grow as we go along as well, with the right safeguards in place, with the necessary players playing the game. And we also agree that there may be we will always have some of these bad players in it, and the system will weed them out as we go along. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there is any major issue with the technology itself. So after all, we are all part of the same community, be it crypto assets being as an investment mode, or whether you're looking at cryptos as payment methods. Ultimately, these technologies here to stay. This technology is here to grow. Singapore, I can talk from the fintech ecosystem perspective as well. We are extremely, extremely supportive of the blockchain community, the blockchain network. We can clearly see major applications of this technology in supply chain financing, trade finance, SME financing, many enterprise use cases where we can all work together and benefit the whole community and the industry altogether as well. So thank you very much for your time, everyone. Really appreciate the time, and really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and thoughts.